This is the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast session number 230, Steve Woods on mobile hypnosis.
Welcome to the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast with Jason Linett, your professional resource for hypnosis training and outstanding business success. Here's your host, Jason Linett.
So it's a funny thing that happens because I get to have some really great people on this podcast series talking about, the great work that they're doing out there as hypnotists, people who I'd brand them truly are workers, that they're out there actually doing the work, getting great results. And also at times, a few of them are these people like me that are also out there teaching the actual process. And then again, there also come these moments where I'm talking to people and I listen and I go, that's a good idea, which by reference to this here, I had Michael DeShalit on the podcast a couple of weeks ago talking about becoming a virtual hypnotist. And of course, hearing that dialogue as soon as I dropped the money to buy my current office. And then, of course, here comes Steve Woods on the program here today, straight out of the UK. And Steve talking about how he had the office and got rid of the office and now goes directly to their homes, their offices, their businesses, and very much the systems in terms of how he makes that work. So it's an amazing thing to actually have the dialogue that, to use the classic quote here, learn from people who disagree with each other, or let's now make it more positive, learn from people who do things differently. Because even I'm not beyond going off and doing that remote session with someone who perhaps, for whatever reason, can't come to my office, or perhaps connecting them with those people who can. So let's officially start to talk about this week's session with Steve Woods, talking about mobile hypnosis, though even if it's not your interest to go off and do hypnotism in people's homes, you're going to hear the real mindset of a worker, of someone who's out there really building that great goodwill about our profession, helping a bunch of people, building mostly a word-of-mouth, referral-based style of business, and then some incredible insights towards the website design of the modern professional, as well as the real value of network marketing, a thing that Steve and I rather bond over in this conversation, talking about getting out there, getting found, and really also helping to professionally represent what it is that we do as hypnotists, while, of course, along the way, helping a whole bunch of people and running a rather thriving, successful business. So listen to this excellent conversation with Steve Woods. Definitely someone to get in contact with, as he's got some really cool thoughts and some really cool ways of going about the work. For even more on growing your own hypnosis business that thrives and succeeds in the growing economy, check out hypnoticbusinesssystems.com. This is where you can now get the all-access pass to my entire hypnosis business training library. Everything from the ground up, whether it is office space, if you don't want to go to people's homes, getting into pricing structure, getting into a new module that we called the Velvet Rope Strategy, how to make sure you're only spending your time having that conversation with people who are ready and motivated to actually work with you. As well, from there, getting into some advanced passive income strategies. And again, the all-access pass is now available over at hypnoticbusinesssystems.com. And with that, let's jump directly into this outstanding conversation. Here we go, episode number 230, Steve Woods on mobile hypnosis.
It's got to be over 30 years ago. I'll just try and work it out really, but yeah, certainly over 30 years ago, I was in retail sales. I was working for an electrical retailer, and we went to see a stage show. We saw a stage hypnotist show in Doncaster, and we came away impressed. We came away thinking there must be something we can do with this to do with handling rejection and motivation. I think at the time he was selling tapes back then. We bought some tapes, but we didn't buy them from the same person, otherwise I'd probably remember who it was. We found them somewhere else, bought some self-hypnosis tapes for motivation, handling sales rejection, which was the big thing. And I didn't think anything much had happened with me at first, and for a while I told people that, and then I realised that things had happened as I was listening to them, but more importantly I saw it with other people, and that sold it to me really at that point. I bought a few books, a couple of 3 books, and I couldn't tell you what they were. I remember at one point having the Orman McGill Encyclopedia of Stage Hypnosis, but I don't think it was as far back as then. And I just learnt little bits and played around for quite a long time, just sticking people to the chairs and drinks to the bars and those sort of things, doing a little bit of therapeutic stuff as well that I'd learnt from the books. And then, 14 and a half years ago now, One Friday morning, I decided, for some reason, and I don't really know why, I just decided I was going to do this properly as such. Went online and luckily dropped on a decent course. And by Sunday, I was speaking with John Chase, who I know he's mentioned many a time.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And I was a few weeks later. I was down in Devon, I think it was somewhere, doing a week-long residential course, and then did some other stuff with him. Helped him out on when he was doing his little sort of days of introduction. If they were near me, I'd go and help out with those, and that was the start then of things.
Yeah, I love that aspect that, again, we surprisingly, we still have a bit of that us versus them mindset of the hypnotherapist to the stage hypnotist. But again, your stories, like many others that have been on here, that it's that first entry point into it, that they first discover it. And I love that you made that correlation to go, I bet we can use something of that nature in terms of our business.
It might have been the guy selling self-hypnosis tapes at the time. I do seem to remember he was selling some stuff that may well have sold that. But yeah, it was. I was fascinated with that, with the mindset change, and it was that. I think more so because my change, I didn't notice, other people noticed, and I use that now with clients. I'll say to them, you might not notice, this stuff's automatic. You get this change, and it's quite often someone else will go, hang on a minute, there's something different about you. You're eating differently. You're doing something different. And so it's still there, that same thought really from that very first time, the very first thing that I discovered.
Yeah, which let's take a moment and sidebar on that. I love that topic of looking for that automatic reaction, looking for that automatic response where, I even say this to my clients, that we're looking for that moment where we're dissolving away the novelty that things are different, that this is just how things are playing out now. How do you go about addressing that in the change process, let's say with your clients?
For me, I talk about the sort of, I do, most of my work is probably future-paced work, really. Quite a lot of it is. I do some other things in there. But I'll often say things along the lines of, as you see yourself, as you are yourself in that future time, this is quite normal, this is quite natural. But then I bring them back to where they're sitting and talk about that where you're sitting now, it's amazing, it's fantastic, it's all these wonderful things that you want it to be, all those goals that we've written down at the start of the process. As you're achieving them, they feel amazing. So it's sort of, I don't suppose it shows the contrast. So they're excited sitting there in the chair, but when they're seeing a year's time or 6 months' time, they're going, yeah, this is it, this is me, it's great, but it's just me now.
Yeah, that's outstanding. So then that experience of, working in sales and then making that decision to then start to learn the hypnosis, what was that next step for you in terms of getting things up and running?
I mean, I stayed in full-time employment, a day job as such, for quite a long time after that. I only finished doing that 2.5 years ago, to go full-time with the hypnosis work, mainly because I quite enjoyed the day job. I had an interesting day job that was nothing at all to do with hypnosis. It was quite fascinating. I was involved in sales and development of black box recorders for vehicles, mostly emergency services vehicles. So it was quite great. It was good because I brought in the stuff I was learning on hypnosis. I was bringing into the training I was doing with collision investigators and things. And it was just fun. It was just interesting to do. So it took me a long time to finally make that decision. It was that, borderlining on burnout now. It's time to do something. Something's got to go to make me get into the change. But actually, it's still been quite useful because I work with business people now, and I can use those experiences of sales management and things that I've done over the years. And I think, I can't remember who it was now, somebody on your podcast a few weeks ago said, it's not just the hypnosis, it's not just the stuff, it's also your own experience comes into that as well when you're dealing with people.
Yeah, absolutely. So then making that decision to open up shop, what were those steps you took in terms of, actually attracting those first clients?
I was already doing it anyway because I was already networking as much as I could, evening times and a little bit of weekends and things, social media and things. Once I took it full time, I went completely mad. I spent far too much on an office. I spent far too much on a vehicle, leasing a vehicle. And I just went mad with doing the networking. For me, being out there in front of people is the best way to bring in business. It still is now, but it was back then as well. So that was my whole thing. I networked within the building. I ran networking groups as soon as they found out what I did. I was in a serviced office So as soon as they found out what I was doing and how much networking I was doing, they asked me to run networking events in the office, which was great for me because that put me in front of all the other residents, all the other businesses that were there. And so it was just lots and lots of that. But then what was interesting was I migrated back to the mobile approach, to the visiting people at home approach. I enjoyed having the office, but I used it less and less. First 6 months, I was in there all the time. I was always doing really well, but I was doing really well with it. And then I found myself naturally migrating back to the way I'd been working for the 10 years before, where I'd been visiting people at home in an evening. What I didn't want to have, and there's no disrespect to people who have, but I didn't want to have that sort of spare bedroom converted into a therapy room. And I never wanted to do that, which is why when I first set out part-time, I set out deliberately to go out and visit people at home, and so migrated back into that quite quickly, really, from having the office.
I love that idea, though. And well, I love that idea, but also I just bought an office, so I don't love that idea. But let's look at it from this way of, I'd be curious to ask, what have been the greatest strengths of you going to those people and actually doing the work in their locations?
I suppose the greatest strengths are that they're more comfortable. So I sell it on the benefits of time-wise. It's time value for them because they're not going to travel to me. It was quite interesting actually, because I was working quite a lot with anxiety clients who were anxious about coming out anyway as well, so they didn't want to come out. Having said that, I switched into different types of anxiety clients when I had the office, which is something different again. People who said, "Oh, I wouldn't want you to come to the home because of this, and this," and even now there are still people who don't want me to visit them at home, and I use treatment rooms and therapy rooms that I'll take by the hour in places on a semi-regular basis. So. But yeah, I mean, the advantage is for them, for the client, is generally more comfortable. Sometimes they might have to sort things out so there's not so much noise in the house. But I also learned quite early on that hypnosis isn't necessarily a fragile experience. I was working with somebody last week, and their 3-year-old was upstairs with her husband, and the 3-year-old was literally running round upstairs. And that only becomes a problem if I let it become a problem.
Yeah. So that's the statement I was listening for.
Yeah.
What kind of steps are you taking to sort of build that, let's say, either expectation or even just I hate to use the word, but the bureaucracy necessary to pull that off, the sort of the staging?
In what way? In that it's not a problem if there's noise.
Yeah, I mean, either that or are there specific, because I mean, let's look at the example of there's many people who have been on here before talking about doing Skype sessions or doing remote video sessions, whatever platform, and for that, I typically say, make sure it's in a quiet space, make sure you've got a good connection. Should there ever be a moment where you find we get disconnected, you'll immediately realize it and easily reconnect. We'll pick up where we left off. Sort of more of the sort of, let's call them the foundational steps to build that environment. So by the time you show up, things are ready to go.
In fairness, I don't actually do a lot of preparation from that point of view. Yeah. I deal with it as it comes. Because quite often I've been to see people and they've changed the subject matter of a session on the spot. And I think that's where I quite thrive with that. I quite enjoy that, whether that comes from the sales thing. I remember doing a sales presentation where at the end of it, this big group of 30 people suddenly said, "Well, have you got anything else to offer?" And I presented something else, and then they asked for a presentation immediately. And I find that quite sort of thrilling, I suppose, whereas some people maybe would find that a bit scary. So I don't do a lot. I suppose thinking about it, I don't do a great deal at all now. I go in and do, the lady I've been working with the last few days, she opens her eyes in the middle of a session, and it's almost the same as that. If there's noise, then I deal with it. If there's a clock that's ticking wildly in the room, then every time that clock ticks, it'll take you deeper. It's those sort of things. Every time her eyes fluttered, I would suggest that it would take her deeper. Every time the toddler runs around upstairs and drops something, that just makes you comfortable and confident that he's being looked after and will allow you to relax deeper, that type of thing.
Beautiful. Just naturally utilizing whatever's there, right?
Yeah, I think it's really important to say it isn't a fragile. When I first learned from the books, I learned that that my understanding of hypnotherapy was the client had to be laid down, I had to wear a white coat, and couldn't wear any aftershave, not that I shave very often nowadays, but it's more of just a quick attack of the stubble. But I couldn't have a window open in case a sudden noise would bring them out of trance and things. And I quite quickly learned that actually that's not really the case. Well, it's the case if you believe it,
Right.
and I believed it back then. And then I learned some of it through John and some of it through other people, some of it through people who've contributed in your podcast as well. Then I've learned that actually it's not a fragile experience. I think I'm working with a teenager who obviously didn't get enough sleep, and whenever she relaxed into hypnosis, she would fall asleep. So, okay, you're going to stand up then and be hypnotized standing up. So you don't, if you fall asleep, you're going to crash. Well, that's going to stop her from falling asleep. So changing it and doing it that way.
You've just highlighted something which I think a lot of people don't tend to realize, is that we do want to have them actively engaged in the process. That there may be others that have different opinions than this, but I tend to be one that, and this just comes from actually having sleep technicians as clients and going, so if someone falls asleep, they go, yeah, they're out. Now, yes, there's an early stage where they may be kind of dozing off, like the person way too late driving and kind of nodding off. But once they're out, they're out. So keeping them actively engaged. And you said the nuance there of just simply having them stand up?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it varies. I might have them sat in not a very comfortable chair, so a dining chair rather than a nice reclining chair, if they're that sort of person that might fall asleep. Or I might just say to them, keep your active imagination going, keep really focused on that thing, rise up a few levels of relaxation. I know levels are an emotive subject, but it makes sense to them whether I think they're in levels or not. If I say, be less relaxed, rise up a few levels, then you can literally see their head coming up, and you can see, because you can see when they're starting to fall asleep, they twitch and things, you can tell that they're going. Or I might just, I actually in a session will also get them to open their eyes and talk to me 2, 3, 4 times in the space of an hour, maybe less as they've done more work with me, and just say on the count of 3, you're going to open your eyes, you're going to stay relaxed, you'll stay hypnotized. And we'll have a quick chat as well. So that can also, if I feel that they're teetering on the edge of sleep, that's
I got to expand on that. What are some of those questions? What are some of those interactions that you're doing in the session by doing that?
It's a phenomena, really. So I don't do a lot. It's quite interesting. I was thinking about this before our conversation. When I first started out and started getting business before taking the office, I spent a lot of time at psychic fairs promoting what I did because I didn't know anything else. I didn't know any other way to do this. And back then I was a big believer in trying to do things differently. And I would do a lot of hypnotic phenomena. So I would say you can try 10 minutes hypnosis. I'd do arm levitations or forgetting numbers or whatever, forgetting the name or a letter out of the name. So I do lots of little bits of phenomena. And actually, I do very little of that now. I would never do it therapeutically, but I don't do much of it now either therapeutically, because if I've done my pre-talk correctly, when I get them to open their eyes and they sit there and go, wow, I can't move my arms, I feel as though I'm stuck to the chair, great, that's it, that's all I need. And I don't need to do any more. Certainly in my experience, I don't need to do any more than that. If they're unsure, then I might do some other stuff, an arm levitation or something, just something to get them to again notice. I want them to know. It's really important to me that they know they're hypnotized. So many people I speak to say, a friend of mine did hypnosis for stopping smoking, didn't work though, they didn't think they were hypnotized. And I always, I started to think really on, well, if they don't know, they could have been deeply hypnotized, but because they could hear the traffic outside or the dog barking in the garden, they think that they're not, or their nose was itching, one of your phrases, that if they believe they're not hypnotized, then why should that thing that they're doing work? Because I heard everything, I wasn't hypnotized, so why should I stop smoking? Yeah, it felt nice, but why should I do that change? So that interaction for me is getting them to notice that hypnotized. It might be to bring them away from sleep a little bit. It might be a case of working with somebody with maybe pain, as I've been working with this morning. It might be just to let her just move, to just adjust herself and be more comfortable in where she's sitting. If I had a one client who couldn't sit still for very long, so we would break the sessions every 10 minutes. And again, it's that, when he first said to me, well, you won't be able to do any work with me because I can't sit still for more than 10 minutes. Why not? We'll just stop every 10 minutes and I'll wake you up as such, and you can stand up and have 2 minutes standing up and then sit back down and we'll carry on.
Yeah. Well, again, just the simple deal with what emerges, that however way the process plays out, that's how it really ought to be. I have to share a quick story here, which this was, working in my office, and this is like the first office I had. So this story goes back like 8-9 years ago. And she comes in. It's the second appointment. I used to do stop smoking in a longer process, but it's the second appointment. She's coming in. Oh, I've completely stopped. This is amazing. But a few things have been stressing me out, and that's been making me think about cigarettes. Now, as I glance down at the bag she's carrying, I realize there's this tiny, fluffy dog inside of it. And she goes, and you can't leave, really, you can't ask me to leave Rupert in the car. It's so hot outside. Is it okay if he's here? Yeah, sure, whatever. And he has separation anxiety. He has to sit in my lap during the session. To which I'm thinking, well, she's already quit smoking. We're just kind of cleaning up a few emotional triggers. Yeah, why not? Mm-hmm. So the simple nature of a Dave Ellman floppy arm drop as I reach over.
Yeah.
And one part just goes, and as you hear Rupert, it just reminds you that he's safe, and his safety helps you to feel even better.
Nice.
And I just then abandoned that technique altogether. You have these moments where you kind of have to work on the fly, and it may not be that perfect environment that you've built, but it's where the client coming in, they don't know the difference between the induction to the deepeners to the change work strategies and the anchoring. For them, the whole thing is hypnosis.
Yes.
So it really becomes whatever you decide it is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's I always say to people, it's a belief thing. It's both ways, but it's a belief thing. I've got to believe that I can do it, and you've got to believe that I can do it as a client. And you've got to believe the way I'm doing it is right. And I always say to people, they can't fail as well. So I'm a big believer in whatever you do is right for you, and let me work around that. Let me make sure that it's right for you. But whatever you're doing is right. There's lots of rights in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, outstanding. So you mentioned the idea, though, I love going back to the whole I felt relaxed, but I don't know if I was hypnotized. And pulling out the phenomenon, you said you'd go back in and do something. What would that something typically be if that was a concern?
Yes, if they were concerned, my pre-talk is very much about awareness. So you're not going to lose awareness, you're not going to lose control.
Right.
So they don't say to me, generally, I think probably for a couple of years really, nobody's said to me, I don't feel as I was hypnotized, because I make sure that they feel that they're hypnotized and make sure that they know that everything's around them. It's more other people. So as I say, it's other people who are commenting on someone they know who's had hypnosis, and they're saying, they don't think that they were hypnotized. But yeah, if I did have somebody who really didn't think that they were hypnotized, I would do something with them. I say it might just be a simple, helium balloons attached to the wrist and picturing your arm rising and looking for that physical response. I tend to start a little bit with magnetic hands anyway, so I've already seen if there's a physical response to suggestion at that point. And again, most people do, but not everybody does. And that's something else that was interesting, because again, originally I was taught, if their hands don't move, then they're not going to be particularly good. Some of my best subjects, their hands have sat exactly still. And I remember one guy at the end said, that thing you did with my hands was amazing. I couldn't believe they came together so fast. And they hadn't moved. So in his head, they moved. And that's fine. So
Which there's the value in the phrase of whether you saw they moved or you felt the sensation as if they were moving.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it isn't a script. It isn't well, the hand didn't move, so that's it. I've got to change what I'm doing. I don't know. I just closed them down and let them fall away. And he was quite happy to believe, whether he'd believed up to that point or whether it was me closing them after a couple of minutes, but after 30 seconds of no movement, it doesn't matter. It's right. It's what's right for them.
Which is something else that's beautiful to highlight, which is that, and I let me talk metaphorically for a moment. Back when I had the hobby as a teenager of doing magic tricks, there'd be a category of a magical technique that we would call the magician fooler. That it was something that was so insanely specific of a technique that it would fool the magician. There was a problem with it, though, which is that it was not impressive at all to the regular person. It's like, I have no idea how you found that card, but wasn't that supposed to be entertaining in some way? So I bring that up because, and there's a demo, there's videos of me doing this on YouTube, of doing like a whole hypnotic depth scale demo where at the end of it, the one online with Brad, he can't see somebody in the room. And every time I do that demo, I tell the class, I'm going to do this as a reference point. However, this is a thing that I only ever do in the classroom. I've never done this with a client.
Yeah.
because it's just not necessary. It's overkill. And really, they're there for the personal change, not to prove whether or not they can achieve negative hallucination, which may not even be necessary as part of our change process. And still, as much as I give that disclaimer, someone goes, but what if I can't get someone to that level? And the answer is exactly what you just said. Here's somebody that's simple, eyes open, hand magnets, or even eyes closed, something that we would do like in the first hour of an intro to hypnosis class, gets enough of that oh wow reaction that they're completely satisfied as to how it's gone.
Yeah, yeah. And it can even be, the client this morning said to me, oh, my husband wants to know why I've paid up front. And I said, it shows your commitment. It starts really early on in my mind, that commitment to change, and then showing something, seeing something happen. It's all part of that whole process. I've had a couple of clients, but one particular client who'd brought about the change before I even got to sit in front of them, just from that commitment of starting things out. So you just never know. To me, there's no line. The hypnosis starts here and it ends here. And whether or not you need phenomena and things. I think you could probably spend too much time with some form of phenomena in the process when you don't need it. And again, it's that being flexible, isn't it, with it?
Right. Yeah. It's the recognize where they are in that experience. Scott Sandlin talks about the expectation to ritual ratio, that if the expectation is extremely high, you don't need a ton of ritual. When if they're coming in cold, that's where you need a little bit more of that, because they're still not quite sure exactly what's about to happen and how it's supposed to play out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always ask them, and I think it came from the training with John originally, how do you imagine it's going to feel to be hypnotized?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And then I ask them, how do you imagine I'm going to do it? How do you imagine I'm going to hypnotize you? And then you get or you're going to use the watch, and or you're going to talk to me, and that overcomes a lot of the things in the pre-talk because they'll say, oh, I'm going to be unconscious, I'm going to be asleep, and no, you're not. If you go to sleep, I'm going to poke you with a big stick, or I'm going to get you, I can make you stand up, or whatever. And it's there's a bit of banter in there. It's getting the rapport going. I suppose someone once said to me that I'm quite realistic, I suppose, in my approach to it, and sometimes you meet people who they're a bit too over the top with it, I suppose, in what they're doing, and then it all becomes a bit spooky and a bit woo-woo. Maybe I'm very, very grounded, I suppose, in what I do.
Well, I like that the word you used before about it just being something natural, just something real world about it. That it's kind of where I come about it too. That again, maybe from the magic world, there were people who were magicians who very much on stage embodied the idea that they were magical, they had magical powers, when of all people to reference Penn and Teller, Penn Jillette would say from the stage, we're just a couple of guys who learned how to do some pretty cool things.
Yeah.
And to look at hypnosis from that perspective, which by the way of doing that, a side effect actually occurs, which is that you kind of break this mindset. Yes, as I'd say in the business promotion stuff, the process isn't magic, though the results can be magical.
Yes. And
people, I found, respond to that little phrase, which is by no means original to me. It's kind of all over the place. But really what we're doing is we're putting hypnosis into that category of going, this is a tool, and the tool is only as good as how you put it actually into use.
Yeah.
So it breaks that whole, it didn't work mindset early on, because now instead it's something that you and I are using this process together. That's what's going to make it effective.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely a partnership in what you're doing. It's a common subject, isn't it? This client-driven process, client-centered process. But it is, and it should be, that it's all down to those. If I've got two even stop smoking clients, they're not going to be the same, because they're going to have different end results. Their goals are going to be a little bit different. Yeah, there's going to be health, and of course there's going to be some money involved, and they're going to save money from stopping smoking. But dig a bit deeper than that, and they'll be very unique, and that's where they get really involved in it then, and it's them. It is them, and it's their new way of thinking.
Yeah. Are there specific questions you're asking in the process to start to unpack that main intention inside?
Yeah, I mean, I ask some questions through. What I tend to do is my process is, a lot of my work comes from referrals. So it's people who've either spoken to somebody that's dealt with me or know me anyway. But there are some cold connections, cold introductions come through as well. So I endeavour to arrange a 20-minute conversation, a phone chat. I call it a strategy call, which might be a bit over the top for some people. But that's where it's, yeah, okay, so you want to stop smoking, but why? Well, I want to save some money, I want to feel better. Yeah, but why? and dig down and dig down and dig down. And it can be, smoking's an interesting one because as we know, it's got to be that they want to change and not somebody else wants them to change. It's got to be the important bit. So I'm looking for that in anything really. I don't want them saying, oh, the wife's telling me I've got to do this thing, or the husband's telling me I've got to do this thing. Yeah, but what about you? What do you want to do? So it filters those out as well. But I want to end up with a list of really good reasons. And sometimes they can be really, really personal reasons. It can be, I'm trying to think of one, worked with a lady on weight release, and we dug down and dug down and dug down. And it turned out that she wanted to go in the fairground rides with her 5-year-old daughter. 5-year-old was too young to go in the fairground ride on her own, had to have an adult sat with her. This lady was too big to sit in the carriage next to her. Absolutely fantastic way of motivating that success and enjoying that success. But it took a little while to dig down that deep to go, okay, that will have it all day long. And sometimes it can be a comment as well. I try to, people talk about you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth and you should use them in that ratio. And I work on that way really, because they'll quite often say things either in that first conversation or when you sat with them doing the pre-talk before you get into it, even comments with other people in the household, because quite often they'll have somebody sat in, I don't have a problem with that. But as they talk to each other, as I'm getting my stuff sorted out, even little things that they can say there, okay, yeah, that's worth grabbing. And I'm really looking for the motivation why they want to, or feel that they want to, or believe that they want to make the change. And then I'm going to get them experiencing that and really enjoying that.
Yeah, let's take a moment on that family dynamic. If there's others around, are there ways that you're engaging them, or is there ways that you're bringing them in?
Not during a session itself. It tends to be, people tend to sit in, unless I'm working with children, because I do some work with children, more so in these last few weeks, because I've had some really good results that have come through the networking. So they're now getting lots of calls about, oh, can you do this for my child and that for my child. So children, of course, the adults are sitting in. But I try to get the adults to be a little bit more quiet, really, in those situations, because I don't want too much interaction from them. When I'm first arriving, sometimes even just the bit of banter between the client, the new client, and the person who's going out to take the dog for a walk for an hour, just that little bit of comment can sometimes be a bit of something that, okay, yeah, I can make use of that. And so I'm always looking for that. But most of the time, during an actual session, most of the time, that other person will leave the room and leave them too. It depends. I always say, it's the first thing I say is when I go into somebody's house, where's your comfortable spot? Everything is driven by their comfort. If they want somebody sat in, if they want to invite the neighbours in, that's fine. If that's what makes them comfortable, if that's the way they're going to go into hypnosis to a better way. So it's all, again, it's that client-driven thing.
Right, and I love that organic approach to it of, again, eliciting from them, a lot of the content that we're going to need, eliciting from them, what's that comfort level, which I want to spend some time chatting with you here too, because the main reason I invited you on here is that we've known each other for a little while online, and watching you are really out there representing what you do in the community and really doing a great job of drawing people in, and seeing that you do, as much as things are referral based, still very active out there in the networking world, right?
Yeah, hugely. Maybe a little bit less this year because my networking's become more focused. But certainly last year, I would attend business networking events 5 times a week, 6 times a week, even. Yeah.
So walk me through your strategy of that. What is it that you're often getting up and talking about? Are there specific sort of markets you're looking after? What's behind that? My business model is to attempt to focus on 4 areas. So weight loss, because I like it and I love the results that come with it, business performance, sports performance, and then workplace well-being, which I'm doing more and more of now, stress release and things like that. So when I'm networking, those are my focus. But every time I get asked about something else, which is why I say try, because I won't limit myself to just doing those 4 things. Sorry, John, if you're listening, I know you said 14 years ago, specialise. But so I will look at anything from a hypnosis point of view. But my strategy when I'm out there networking is twofold really. Sometimes I'll go in and talk about something specific I've just done. Sometimes I'll be listening for people who are
maybe complaining about something. Sometimes I listen to this podcast by a guy, Jason, somebody who talks about, he talks about trying to wait until the end of a networking, the 60-second intro, and then you can see if anybody's been particularly nervous, and you might talk about that as well. It's trying to tailor. You can't always tailor it because sometimes you're up first almost in these things. So I have a few different strategies. Sometimes there's a little bit of a script, sometimes it'll be just off the cuff. It depends on the meeting. I do a weekly meeting, so most of the people in that room see me every week, so that'll be more of a story, a success story. This week this has happened. Whereas if I go to a new group completely, it might be just this is me, this is what I do, these are the organisations I've worked with, and going for the high level stuff. So I've done stuff with the British Medical Association, with doctors and consultants. So that always stops people. I go, really? Or a big company that I work with, working with their staff. So I might go very generic as well if it's an unknown event to me. So again, it's flexibility. If I go with a script every time, people are either going to get bored with it or I'm going to get bored with my delivery as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the benefit of, I put it in the category of like the comedian doing crowd work, that you really do earn that right, that you can get up and talk about those things that you're the most interested in. And I tend to be one, if you've heard me talk about the hub and spoke model, that here's that old time wagon wheel. And in the center of that, there's the hub of your business. There's the way that most people are finding you. And in your case, in that scenario, it's going to be that network marketing. But it's where you then have those spokes of the wheel going out to the outer frame. And this is what allows us to, yes, be that generalist, but do so in an extremely specific way.
Yeah.
So to get up and talk about, this week it may be the business performance because you're realizing, hey, that's the audience I've got in front of me. Let me focus on that. Here's the meeting where for some reason there were a bunch of dentists as guests. Not that we were trying to elicit dentists to join our B&I chapter back in the day. But of course, that's the day I got up and talked about people who grind their teeth. So that ability that we can broadcast that specific message the way that for those that receive emails from me, yes, I do send frequently, but they're not going at it from, here's a list of the dozen things that are going on right now. It's always laser focused around one specific message. At your meetings, is it the opportunity to get up and do like that 1 minute sort of sales pitch type setup?
Yeah, most of them are. So my regular one's 45 seconds now because the group's growing, so there's limited time. But yeah, I go to quite a few where it's 1 minute. I go to some where it's 30 seconds, which is quite limiting. But then you've got to focus. You've got to really think about what you've got to say. And I do, wherever I can, demonstrations as well. So this week at my regular group, it's my 10 minutes. Now, my 10 minutes is usually what I term as a 10-minute zap. So it's sit down, feet flat on the floor. If you want to join in with this, close your eyes. And I take them on a really quick journey for 9 minutes or so just before we finish. And I'll do as much as that as I can, or I might go to a group and, like you say, there might be something specific that they want to talk about, or a themed group. I think I did a networking group where it's a lot of legal people. So I actually made a recording and said, you can have this for free. You can try this self-hypnosis thing, and it's something relevant to what they're doing. So it's as much, again, it's that experience. It might be different in other countries, but certainly here there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of confusion about what hypnosis is, and you always get are you going to make me look like a chicken? Well, if you really want to, yes. Why? But why would you want to? But you get that all the time. So for me, it's that as much as I can, do something. Get somebody to get them to experience something. And I actually asked at last week's meeting, I said, do you want me to talk about me and my history and how I got here, or do you want one of my quick 10-minute focus sessions? And they went, oh no, focus session. Nice. because it's something for them to take away, and they talk about it for the next few days. And so I do see an increase in referrals when I get the opportunity to do that as well.
Show is always better than tell. Give them the experience rather than talk about what the experience. I'd be curious to ask, because you talked about sort of the standard issues that people would come to see a hypnotist for. Hey, we've got time. Could you give us an example of one of those sales pitches and how you'd usually present that message out there?
Okay, it might be a testimonial. Certainly more recently, it's been a testimonial. So it'll be something, I'll read a really quick client testimonial. So as I mentioned, I'm doing more work with children in these last few weeks because one of the networking members asked me whether I could help his child, had well, his testimonial says this guy is a magician, talking about magicians. and so I'll take that all day long, and I'll use that, and I'll stand up and say, just recently I've been doing a lot of work with children over anxiety, school transition, and here is what somebody else says. And it might be as simple as that, because that's enough. Don't need to say any more than that. Or it might be something more specific that's gone on. It might be in some regular meetings. This week I might talk about, well, this week I've been recording for a podcast where reputational hypnotists, that's a terrible way of phrasing it, have been interviewed on it. But it's all about credibility, and it's all about why should people deal with me? Or I might talk about some work I've been doing with a cancer charity where I've been supporting people with pain relief, with sleeping and things like that. Again, so those might be the specifics. And again, testimonials, wherever I can, I get a testimonial, because that to me anyway is the best thing to stand up and read out.
Yeah. So many people in BNI, and even they would say that it's all about, giver's gain, the mindset that those who give the most referrals also receive them back as a bit of reciprocity. There'd also be the mindset within BNI that, and for those who aren't familiar with this, BNI, Business Networking International, it's a very popular, as you can see, worldwide networking community, which the premise is that the rules were invented by the members. So what I'm about to say may sound a little more strenuous than what someone would want to be willing to jump into. Yet again, you're very clearly a proponent of it. I was when I was actively building that segment of what I was doing. And I love their catchphrase that BNI is a match for every business, but not a match for every individual. That it comes down to the person and what they're willing to put into it. It's the same I'd say to someone who reaches out to me about, whether it's someone else's course or even my programs online, to say that, well, it's like anything else. You're going to get out of it as much as you put into it. And the other side effect with BNI would be that because it is a group with rules, you're meant to be there every single week. Now, there's exceptions that are allowed. Basically, once a month, you're allowed to at least either be absent or send a substitute in your place. And based on their numbers, it works out to be about once a month you're okay to miss it in some form, which again, you're training that sales staff. You're training those people in the room to become your own best sales advocates. Yeah. And the more that they interact with you, the more you are building that, as they'd say, visibility and credibility, which then lead to that profitability. So with the nature that many of your people are coming in by referrals, what's that passion? What's that mission? What's that reason that you're still there?
Because it works.
Yeah, there you go.
Again, it's that, but I do see, not so much within BNI. BNI is that big commitment. It's commitment time-wise. It's a big financial commitment, really, for a lot of people. I can understand that. But even some of the smaller networking groups, I do see people come. I get other hypnotherapists introduced to me from there who I help to do some work with. Quite often people say, oh yeah, I know a friend of mine's trying to do hypnotherapy and they're not doing very well, and they'll get an introduction and I'll pick up with them and help them and mentor them, whether it be proper training, whether it be just a bit of, try this, do this, that sort of approach, just to try and guide them, really. Big believer in the fact that there's lots of potential clients out there. So there's room for everybody doing this. But yeah, so you see people, as I was saying, so you do see people come and go. I'll go to some networking, say not BNI type networking, where there'll be other people there doing what I do, other people doing hypnotherapy, hypnosis, but they don't stay long. And I think that's the thing, you've got to view it as a long term. Why? What made me stick at it? I don't quite know. I do know. I like, this sounds terrible, I like going into a room where people are going, what is it you do then? And they're expecting me to be, not necessarily an accountant, there's something, nothing wrong with accountants, apologies to the accountants, there's nothing wrong with accountants, and I go, I'm a hypnotist, and I just sort of almost, it's terrible, I almost deliver it in a little bit of a casual way, and everything just stops, and they just go, right, really? Yeah. And I love that. I love that. Maybe I like being a bit of an attention seeker. I don't know. Maybe I need to see get some therapy for that. But
it's only diagnosable if it doesn't work for you.
Yeah, no, and
if it helps you, then just keep it. And just
absolutely. And also, I network outside of networking. So I network at the supermarket. I give out business cards. I wear a lanyard that says hypnotist on it. Mm-hmm. I used to have a jacket that said hypnotist and the website on the back, like a sort of a coat, sort of an outdoor type jacket. I don't do that now. I thought that was probably going a bit too far, but I'd be in the queue to pay for petrol and someone would tap me on the shoulder and say, "You're really a hypnotist. Can you do anything for this? Can you help somebody with this? Can you help my child with this?" And so it's a way of helping as many people as you can. Yes, it's great for business, of course it is, but it's also making it accessible to people, because it isn't.
Yeah.
How many people I meet, and I'm sure it was the same with you when you were networking, Jason, that it was, I've always wanted to deal with this thing. I've had this thing for years, and I've often thought about hypnotherapy, but I've never known where to go to. I Google it and I get hundreds of hits. Who do I use? Who do I choose?
Yeah.
And so by meeting somebody in a networking environment or supermarket or wherever, that can be just the turning point for them, where they can actually get some help with that thing that they're looking for, or that person that they care about the same way.
Yeah, yeah, which, again, the opportunity that many people have had that same experience, to bring it full circle back to where we started. They had that experience of seeing it, the idea, getting that service as a means of personal help entered into the mind. And it's where, how does something get anchored? Let's bring about it from a hypnotic perspective. It either gets anchored, it either gets conditioned by way of repetition or intensity. So there are many times where, not everybody is at that place of absolute threshold of the problem. They still recognize that here's something they want to change in their life. There's still something they want to address. And, it may not necessarily be that intensity of, I just hit my absolute worst of this problem. It may just be, oh, wait, here's actually a rather reasonable person who, let's call it out, isn't creepy, seems to be professional, and people here like him. Yeah, let me work on this thing now.
Yes.
And that becomes that perfect entry point for them.
Yeah, because then you're not always that last resort. Like you say, they've not always hit the very bottom. I still get a lot of clients like that. They'll make an inquiry and 6 months later they come back and they go, "Oh, I really need to deal with that thing now because this has just happened and that's